Hi, my name is Andrea Hendricks. I am an Associate Professor of Mathematics at Georgia State University Perimeter College and also serve as the Associate Department Chair of the Online Math Department. I've been teaching at the college for 28 years of my 29-year career in higher education, with 20 of those years being devoted to online teaching. An important focus for me with my students is equipping them to be successful in my class by giving them strategies that promote learning. And so I would like to share with you a couple of the strategies. There are so many, but hopefully these 2 tips will help you to improve your success in not only your math classes, but all of your classes. So you probably are aware of this, but the goal of learning is to be able to retrieve facts from your memory, to create a foundation for future knowledge, and to create a web of connected knowledge. That is, you know how things that you're learning are connected to other things that you've learned. And most importantly, the goal of learning is to interrupt the forgetting process. If we don't apply strategies to learn and retain information, by nature we will forget those pieces of information. So how can we learn effectively? Well, we have to engage in effective strategies that require effort and a struggle, right? Learning actually takes time, and it's hard, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. And we need to avoid strategies that loop information through our short-term memory or take the brain out of the process altogether. Think about Googling something. You're outsourcing your knowledge, so your brain has no opportunity to learn and eventually retrieve those facts. And then we also want to engage in strategies that avoid illusion of mastery. That is, sometimes we get so familiar with the content, but that familiarity makes us think that we know something when we actually don't. I like to tell my students to think about driving to some location. When you first drive to a place you've never been, you might have to rely on Google Maps or some other maps app. But the more and more you visit the place, the more you're able to drive there without having to refer to some crutch. Like, you can get there on your own. And then once you become very familiar with that destination, you then learn how things are connected to where you're going, right? You can get to other places from that one point. And that's really what our memory is like. We want to create this web that we can drive to, that is, that we can get this information out of our brain whenever we need it, right? There's a comfort level or automaticity to that information. So the first strategy that I want to share with you is this concept of elaboration. Elaboration is the process of linking new learning to prior knowledge. So the way that you can actually implement this in your own course is after each lecture or video lesson, even if your instructor doesn't give you the time and space to do this, you can do this on your own. And it really just requires a few minutes for you to write a summary of the concept in your own words. Research shows that the sooner you can do that after hearing the new information, the longer it's going to stick with you. And so think about, how would you explain what you've just heard to a friend? And then also, how can you explain how this new concept relates to previous things you've learned? How is it similar or different? So taking a few moments to do that, and jot it down on a piece of paper that you can add to as you go through the semester or your term, so that by the end of the term you have this document that you've created that has kind of a summary of every lesson that you've talked about on one document. In fact, in the book called Make It Stick by Brown, Roediger, and McDaniel, there's a quote that says, "There is no limit to what students can learn when they practice elaboration." It truly is a very effective strategy for learning. My second strategy for you to try is retrieval practice. Retrieval practice is the act of getting information out of our mind. Retrieving information strengthens the memory of that information. It's just like what I was talking about earlier with driving to a new location, right? The more and more times that you revisit it, the easier it is to get there. And that's the same thing with information. The more and more times we pull that information from our memory, the more easily it is for us to access that information. So what does this look like? In practice, this looks like working practice tests, creating a set of flashcards where you are pulling the information from your memory, or just recalling information without notes or assistance. The key is, however you're going to be tested, is to practice in that manner. Typically, you're not going to be able to use notes or your book on a test, and so you need to practice doing problems without those notes and books, right? It seems pretty easy, but actually research shows that not a lot of students do this type of retrieval practice. So it's a very effective tool for learning. It's also called the testing effect, right? You want to test yourself before the actual test to see what you know and don't know so that you can then focus on the things that you don't know. This takes time, right? And it seems difficult because when you realize you don't know something, you've got to go back and do some work. But all of the evidence shows that these types of strategies that seem difficult, they are called a productive struggle, that they lead to long-term learning and retention. So I hope these two strategies will help you be successful in your course, and good luck.